There's too many of you crying.
Welcome to another edition of What's Hot. I'm Howard Eagle, your host. As always, we'd like to thank the community for tuning in and remind you that you can catch us right here at RCTV, Channel 15, every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. If you'd like to contact us regarding the possibility of coming on the show to give us feedback or for any other reason, please feel free to give us a call at 752-1426. That's 752-1426. Joining us, as always, is our co-host, Mr. Mark Freidman.
Greetings.
And we have our special guest who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Amen Ptah, returning to continue the discussion that we started the last time you were here regarding the No More Mojos campaign, which was launched, I believe, on August 17th.
Indeed.
And we said we would have you back to do follow-up to see how that's going and so forth. Before we launch into that, can we just remind the viewers of what the campaign is all about, why it came into being and so forth?
Okay, well, it started off, I seen a news clipping on 13 Wham, and it regarded a 14-year-old child being raped by a business owner. And the person that actually owned the business that is owned is Mojo's on Genesee and Frost. And he also was allegedly accused for raping a 15-year-old child in Syracuse as well. So the community wasn't aware about it. So I decided to take initiative and create my own to fuel the campaign online with an online presence, and eventually it gained momentum. And as a result, we boycotted them, and to this now it seems to be succeeding.
Okay, I want to be clear for the viewers that the particular Mojos that we're speaking of is the one near the corner of Genesee and Frost. That's
Indeed.
The particular one that we're speaking of. And so when you say that it seems to be successful, it seems like it's going well. I mean, what do you base that on?
Well, you know, the 17th was the actual first day that we actually started demonstrating. The boycott actually started before the demonstration itself.
Okay.
People just stopped patronizing them. But on the 17th, it left a huge impact in the community. A lot of people was riding by honking their horns. We hardly see anybody going in and out of the parking lot. Normally, it's busy on a Friday. There wasn't hardly any cars. And the following day, they were closed.
Okay.
They were closed on Saturday and they were closed on Sunday. And they had a sign up on the door basically stating that it was due to a Muslim holiday. They basically Ramadan. They was riding a Ramadan wave.
Okay.
And I rode around town and I seen other Mojos open.
Okay.
But this particular Mojos was closed.
Okay. So that's not typical as far as I can remember that Mojos shuts down for Ramadan.
Indeed.
That's not typical. So there is definitely an impact, and ultimately, what is the goal? I mean, it's clear that people, including myself, I'll say very clearly, believe that this business should not operate. It shouldn't operate in the black community. It shouldn't operate in any community. If you have pedophiles who are, connected to business, it shouldn't exist. But beyond that, so we assume, and I believe it's a reasonable assumption, that the business will be shut down eventually.
Indeed.
And then what's next? Where do we go from there? Is that it? I mean, we've shut it down and that's it?
You can't. It's unfortunate that a child got raped, or allegedly, should I say allegedly got raped,
Okay.
to start a movement such as this. But from my understanding and from what I'm observing and witnessing from my very eyes, people are coming together.
Okay.
In the community, and it takes consistency. We've actually been walking through the neighborhood and connecting with a lot of the community members in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And they've been engaging. They expressed their concerns on this business being open and they want it gone. But the ultimate goal is community empowerment,
Okay.
Economic development, getting more into the political arena, because a lot of things is based on politics, especially in Rochester. But if the community can empower themselves, we wouldn't have to go to outside networks to fuel our economy.
Okay.
You know, you go to Brighton or you go to Pittsburgh, the money circulates like 7, 8 times before it's actually outsourced.
Okay.
In our community, it's only circulated once, if
Okay.
that.
Okay.
As soon as somebody get $1, they spend it, and you know,
Sure.
it gets spent on consumption. It's not investing.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know?
Leaves the community.
So if
Not
the
to mention producing.
Indeed. So if the community could grab a philosophy of we all can do this together, you know, have our own bank, you know, have a trust-based fund basically, where everybody put money into a certain account, and when it gets to a certain level, the money gets to a certain level, we can take that money, push it, buy a building, or something like that. My idea, I think we should buy a Walmart or something like that, like create our own Walmart.
Okay.
Like create our own Walmart. We got buy our own foods, buy our own clothes, and all that other stuff. Buy our own supplies for the store. So all the money is being generated within the community. It's not leaving the community. It's being self-generated, and it becomes residual.
Okay.
And everybody who have a share in that community, in that company or that corporation, you know, gets wealth from it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's community, and if it's community-based, the whole community as a whole is growing,
So
instead of single individuals privately.
The stockholder concept,
Indeed.
basically, maybe with a twist. It's interesting, if you want to jump in, that you mentioned, you said often these things are political. We argue that everything is political from the cradle to the grave, that politics touches everything. And so absolutely, it makes sense that would be part of the work. That would be one aspect of the work, that is to get more involved in politics and the political machinery of the city. You have thoughts?
Oh, absolutely, because the concept that we're talking about in terms of the wider struggle and the wider work that you're expressing right now, this idea of kind of cooperative economics obviously has a long history in terms of efforts. And I think knowing that history is really important in terms of both locally and nationally, the struggle that's become, you know, in terms of like black communities, communities of color, really truly controlling their own resources and having that kind of cooperative economic setup. One of the risks, I think, historically, one of the risks and challenges becomes how do you avoid becoming another form of exploitation? You know what I mean? If you look at that history, oftentimes people start with that kind of attitude like cooperative economics and everything, and the challenge becomes preventing it from descending into just kind of more capitalistic exploitation, just under a different face, right? So
Sure. That's something to be on guard for.
Yeah.
The language is very interesting. Cooperative economics. You made me think about Dr. Malana Karinga and Kwanzaa and the principles of Kwanzaa, and that is in fact one cooperative
That's what I was
economics.
thinking,
And so that's the kind of cultural belief system that intellectuals and leaders, not just intellectuals, people like Malana Karinga really were on the front line, you know, in their younger days, have encouraged us for a long time to buy into that kind of belief system, that kind of value system, and so forth. There have been some problems historically for our community, and a big one has been trust, has been that we don't trust each other. Where does that even come from? Let's talk quickly about where it comes from in a historical sense, but then let's speculate, if you will, about what it's going to take to break that down.
Okay, it comes from slavery. You know, it generated since slavery, and you know, the slave masters did a good job at splitting the slaves apart and pitting them against each other, and it generated self-hate. Eventually, you know, it grew into a life of its own, and they took their hands off and just let the monster grow.
Okay.
You know, and that's what's going on now. Like, you have dog eat dog. You also have and also you have to understand this too. Crime is economic. Crime generates money for the prison industrial complex, for police officers, for law enforcement, on so many levels. It also generates money for the healthcare system as well. You know, so when you have all these things being fueled by a system that perpetuates violence, you know, through the media, through the message, the negative frequency that's being pushed through the airwaves, whether it be via radio or television, you know, you're gonna have what we got now. You're gonna have people dog eat dog, scarcity of resources. People are fighting for the same resources, and there are crumbs basically. So if there was enough resources there for everybody, crime would decrease dramatically. But the reason why a lot of people sell drugs is because they're impoverished. You know, I'm pretty sure if they had money, they wouldn't want to sell drugs. But because the money ain't there, and if you really want to stop the drug flow, tell Congress to stop allowing the drugs inside the neighborhood. Bottom line, we don't got the boats or the planes that fly or ship that stuff in here. You know, if you stop it from coming in, then we have a lot of things that wouldn't be happening. You got unemployment. You know what I'm saying? Unemployment is at very high. It's always been a problem in the black community since forever.
Historically.
You know, historically. So if you got unemployment, poverty, scarcity, drugs, guns, you know, illegal guns, because you tie that all together,
tinderbox.
You got the situation we have now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Which is not new, which is very old. It's interesting. I was just watching a video yesterday of the late Dr. Amos Wilson, and he was discussing crime and the origins of it in this society and what's really at the root of it and so forth. It's a very, very interesting video. It centers around a book that he wrote that has to do with black-on-black violence. I can't think of the name of the book right now, but it was a very interesting video, and as you were talking, it made me think about that. He was making a point that there's a lot more to this than we understand, and that we got to learn how to really think deeply and critique and understand what's really happening, what has happened historically and what is continuing to happen. And of course, Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about the post-traumatic slave syndrome. You say this goes back to slavery, even though some people would argue, oh, they're full of stuff. This ain't had nothing to do with slavery and so forth.
Just leave that be. Just let it go.
This is not about that. They're making excuses and so forth. What do we say to those people?
That period of time wasn't that long ago. I mean, like, I think sometimes the mentality when people, particularly white people, when they say that, but other people say that as well, the idea that, you know, oh, that was, what, 200, 300 years, you know, that was a long time ago. That's not that long a period of time in terms of if we have a historic way of thinking and understanding that, you know, 50, 100, 150 years ago, what's happening right now is connected to that. And people understand that in an intellectual sense, but when it comes to issues of racism in the history of slavery, history of those types of histories, right? Like, people sometimes get divorced from that understanding that, guess what? The conditions that are here right now, they didn't just poof come up yesterday, and they aren't natural. They're a part of the record and part of what's developed year after year, decade after decade. So.
Indeed.
There's no doubt that we can trace the historical record and show how these conditions develop. Hopefully that everybody in our community would think deeply about this, that it cannot possibly be just one big coincidence that throughout the United States of America, there are these predominantly black and brown communities, all of which are experiencing the same thing, the things you were listing. High unemployment, high poverty rates, guns and drugs flooding the communities and so forth. Unless people are suggesting some kind of collective pathology on the part of black people, it can't be a big coincidence. And so there must be some explanations. If history is not one of those explanations, then I really would like to know what thinkers would point to. I mean, if historical development is not a clear major factor, then what are the major factors would be a question that we need to talk about. And so we only, how they say, touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of the historical reality that surrounds this. But we do want to move toward solutions. That's really where we need to be focused. And I must say this, we can't forget that school plays a role in all of this also. That education plays a role.
Yes, it does, especially, and that's what I was gonna go to historically. If you was to remember Brown versus Board, the Brown versus Board judgment when the Supreme Court made segregation illegal in school systems. Well, there are some rich industrialists that did their job making sure that they can resegregate schools legally via special education and the mentally gifted. You know what I'm saying? So when you create classrooms specifically for special education, and the majority of them is black boys. Majority of those are in that classroom is black boys, and the majority of those who are in the mentally gifted classes are whites. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You resegregated the schools.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Very slick and keen, but out under the radar.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
And I would argue that's only one aspect of what has happened. I would even argue, and I think we could make a legitimate argument, that schools never were really desegregated. There was a move to do that, but the resistance was so massive that it never really happened. And so this is one aspect of it. There are many other aspects as well. I know in terms of solution, you have something that you want to put to this community in terms of hoping to shape or reshape people's thinking and so forth. And so let's make sure we do that before our time runs out. Would you like to do that at this point?
Yeah, indeed. I want to, we have a pledge that Brother Yusef from Detroit, this is actually something he uses in Detroit.
Okay. Bunchy Shakur, Brother
indeed,
Yusef. Okay.
Indeed,
okay.
This was actually his pledge.
Okay.
And I read it and I said, you know what, this is powerful. I don't have to do too much legwork in writing my own pledge because
why recreate the wheel, right?
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
You know.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, this is basically to actually reshape the thinking. Hopefully, this pledge can possibly bring people together and bridge the gaps between the generations. You have older generations and younger generations that have no understanding of each other, and that's why they're constantly at odds. Hopefully, this pledge right here can bridge that gap. Okay. You know, it's a philosophy. The pledge goes I pledge allegiance to do my part in restoring the neighbor back to the hood. I pledge to develop myself, my family, and my household to the greatest extent possible of being a shining example of being a husband, father, son, brother, wife, mother, daughter, and sister in my neighborhood. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to improve the quality of my neighborhood. I will work diligently to honor my family in my neighborhood with good deeds and treat my neighbors as my extended family. I will keep myself mentally sound, spiritually grounded, and physically fit, building a strong body, mind, and spirit that will exemplify positivity and productivity in my neighborhood. I will unselfishly share my time, knowledge, resources, and wisdom with my neighbors, young and old, in order to build and maintain a healthy neighborhood. I will do my part to keep my neighborhood clean and safe. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively to maintain peace, harmony, and love in my neighborhood. I will train myself to never hurt or allow anyone to harm someone in my neighborhood for an injustice cause or through negative behaviors of stealing, gun violence, verbal abuse, police brutality, selling drugs, rape, or any other social ill that works to destroy my neighborhood. This is my pledge to do my part by being a caring neighbor in my neighborhood, by working to keep my neighborhood a peace zone instead of a war zone.
Right, it's excellent. And so the idea is to really get this in people's minds and so forth, and of course we want to see it manifested in action, right?
Indeed.
It's symbolic to a degree, but that's not the intent. It's for it to just rest there, for people to say, yeah, I just read the pledge, I think that's cool, man, that's slick, I like that, you know. But to really begin to manifest these behaviors that are described in the pledge.
Let it become a subculture.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Let it become a way of life, you know, and this is basically like reinstilling the principles, morals, and values that's been lost in our culture. This is something that we actually practiced in Africa before we were slaves.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
This is something that actually had us collected, and we lost it. It's time to refound it, restructure, and rebuild, and take our places back into this world.
Okay, okay, absolutely. Now, people will ask the question, okay, all of this sounds good. Tell me the next concrete step. What do we say?
Okay. Well, the next concrete step right now is getting people on the same page.
Okay.
You know, like engaging the community like I've been doing.
Okay.
You know, I've been walking through the community and I've had people walking up to me and jumping out their cars, shaking my hand, and saying they like what I'm doing and stuff like that. So people, they want this to happen. You know, there's a lot of people that didn't know how to approach it.
Sure.
You know, and right now it seems like it's a formula that's working.
Absolutely.
So as long as we continue this momentum,
yes, sir.
The key is consistency.
You
know, just
now
keep pushing.
That's part of what worries me. You know, to be honest, now when we look historically, you can get African American people to rise up around crisis situations. We're often in the reactive mode as opposed to proactive, and it has been historically difficult for us to make that transition between the reactive stage and then the proactive, getting the funds together collectively, starting the collective economics and so forth. And so you're thinking about, something in my gut drives me to ask, what's going to be different this time? Or what, not that you have this golden answer and so on, but what do we need to do differently? We need to think about that. What do we need to do differently?
Eliminate the apathy.
Okay, all right.
Before you answer that question, because it's important, it's probably one of the bigger questions, is in the immediate sense, at least, when you talked about concrete steps in the immediate sense, you will continue to hold rallies and you've been rallying since the beginning of this, right? Like several times a week in terms of outside, and we came for one of those, and we're going to continue to come in terms of outside to raise attention, to raise people's awareness to this, and to place pressure on Mojos to close down at Genesee and Frost, right? So that's something concrete in the immediate sense. But the question you asked is the bigger question.
Like I said, eliminate the apathy, which is going to be very hard to do.
Yes, sir.
But also, a key thing to do is reaching the youth. It starts with the youth. You know, we have a lot of people that are stuck in their ways that are older, but if we catch them at a young age, you know, we can shape their consciousness. A lot of their minds been shaped through the media. Parents have kids, and the parents were really kids themselves. So you know, they sit a child in front of the television, and the television babysit the child. And they're being fed all these messages. Well, if the television is being fed to our children, then we can use that same tool to re-educate the children.
It's just a matter of what the content is.
It's just a matter of the content is, exactly. Same thing with the music. Prime example, you remember the golden era of hip hop with Public Enemy, Brand New being Conscious.
Very different period of time.
Very different period of time, right?
No doubt.
But at that time, look at the movement. Look how many people was wearing red, black, and green. Look how many people was wearing medallions. And look how many people was proud to be black. And the airways was saturated with conscious music. You know what I'm saying? So it became a conscious movement because the medium was perpetuating a message, you know what I mean, that spread it like wildfire. You know? So look at it now. You have a message that's being pushed, popping bottles, sex and drugs and all this stuff. And as a result, you go into clubs or you go out into the neighborhood, people's popping bottles. You got females dressing provocatively. You got some of them looking like Nicki Minaj. You got females with that is so eager to get butt implants and things like that now. You know,
Well, there's always been a correlation, a relationship between what the arts reflect and what we see on the streets. And that's, I believe, been more so true for African American people than probably most other cultures in this society. And so even as you're talking, I'm thinking you're talking about what our children are being fed. My mind went to the Black Panthers and how part of their work was to deprogram children. They would grab them when they come out of school and say, we need to now give them the truth of what they heard today, or to give them the pieces that are missing, or to, you know, correct things and it was systematic and ongoing, and it absolutely did feed into a heightened consciousness. So that's part of the work that you plan to do?
Indeed.
All right, and so what then is the role of an educator in that work?
To engage in it, to cooperate with it, to participate in whatever way people can, because there's always roles. In the broad sense, there's always going to be roles We got a lot of work to do to move not just educators, education system as a whole to fit into that kind of piece, because as of now it's divorced from that.
So I'm trying to help you think. It seems to me that one of the first groups that you would call on in this community is educators, to say we need to do a re-education program. You're instructors, you have the expertise, you're the professionals, come and help us. We need to call people out, literally, not in a negative way, but you know, we gotta make this collective thing real. It can't be abstract, you know, noise and so forth.
The thing I said, one of my philosophies, like I've been helping, one of my campaign philosophies in this, the community have a responsibility. And when I say community, I mean everybody, everybody, all sectors, you know, radio stations, politicians, you know what I'm saying, the educators, anybody that has something, the engineers, architects, everybody, you know what I mean, that has something that can offer to the table, contribute, to bring it to the table so we can look at it, evaluate it, assess what we have, and make a huge movement out of it. We need that, you know what I'm saying, because obviously our children is not really learning what the things that they really need inside the school system. They're not learning what they're supposed to learn. They're supposed to be there for three basic things, reading, writing, and arithmetic, you know what I mean, and they're not even learning that. You know?
Which is a whole nother discussion, but a very important one, because there's so much connected to that. Some people are pushing this idea that that's all you want the children to know is how to read, write, and do math.
Start with that.
But as you just said, we don't even have that part down. And so the discussion about any other thing beyond that is really ridiculous. If you don't have the foundation upon which to build, building can't occur.
Indeed.
And that's what's happening with many of our children. That's simplistic. But it's real at the same time, you know, and it's something we need to talk about and gain a clear collective understanding about in this community. So even at this point, are you looking for people to contact you to get involved? Our time is running short. Give us a number or email or something.
You can contact me on Facebook. My name is Amen Ptah. That's AMEN PTAH. And you can also call me at 284-0424. That is my phone number. You can reach me on email a.ptah@yahoo.com, and let's get this going. You know, we need to have this popping. The clock is ticking. You know, and our children they suffering, and we need to save them and restructure their thinking.
Absolutely, you know? Indeed. Let's get this going. As always, we'd like to thank the community for tuning in, and remind you that you can catch us right here at RCTV, Channel 15, every Wednesday and Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. We always close by saying no justice.
No peace.
No peace, indeed.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying.